Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for a fantastic conversation that I am anticipating with our voices, an opportunity to hear from Black employees at RCC about the experiences they've had, about their feelings about this current moment, and about the ongoing movement for racial justice, both on campus and off. It's been a truly challenging time, I think, for many of us, following both a national and international pandemic, as well as the viewing of a brutal killing of a Black male, where so many people were impacted. This is a conversation that's been taking place an awful lot in Black and brown communities across the country. And I think it's now time, if not past time, for other voices to become a part of this conversation. So today we'll start by hearing from some of our Black employees about their feelings about what's going on. Dr. Baston is
Thank you so much.
Moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and I want to welcome all of you. We're really excited because this is part of a beginning conversation on how we improve as an institution, and as we move into what we want to really hold on to, this idea of inclusive excellence. This idea that we have to really be an excellent institution, we have to be fully engaged in equity, fully engaged in access, fully engaged in all of the work that brings us together. So it's exciting to see that thus far, we already have 81 people who have joined us today from near and far. Just a few ground rules. We are gonna have everybody mute themselves except those when that are gonna be the panelists. I have some questions and we have a wonderful set of panelists today that you'll get to hear from. And so we're gonna get started, and I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves and then what they hope will come from the conversation today. We'll start with Fabiola.
Thank you, Dr. Baston. Thank you, Melissa, for organizing this. Just in case you don't see what my t-shirt says, it is a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. And it basically says that our lives begin to end the day we stop talking about what matters. And so again, thank you so much for bringing this conversation and this opportunity to the forefront. And as the Associate Provost at RCC, what I hope to accomplish in this conversation is exactly that, the start of conversations that's going to help us unify in our one vision of fully commitment to change and to equity in our economics, in our academics, and in our communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Shamika.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Baston and Melissa, for the invitation and the opportunity. I'm Shamika Mitchell, Associate Professor of English. I've been at the college since 2005. I joined full-time in 2007. I am the co-advisor to the Black Student Union. I am the advisor of the Muslim Student Association. And I think I was, if I got the information correct, I think I am the first Black person to get tenure in the English department's history. It's been an interesting 15 years, most of it good and very productive. I do a lot of comics. This is the new book project that came out in January, just before the pandemic. Unstable Masks, published on Ohio State University Press. It was 2.5 years in the making, in addition to teaching the full load. So for me, the biggest issue has been as an advisor to students and hearing student concerns, working with student involvement and other members of administration, as well as my own experiences, is that the discourse has changed dramatically from what people mostly know from generations past. And what people are talking about now, or the way that they're engaging in conversation, is very different. And my doctoral work was in identity, particularly Blackness and identity. And so I'm aware of the changing trajectory. And I think it's important to have those conversations and not arrive at the table in a defensive place or space, but also not with accusatory or anger in intent. But there are ways that, you know, we need to have these conversations, I think, more consistently and also in policy and in practice. I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Zenya?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Zenya Richardson. I am an adjunct with the School of Social Sciences and Education. And what I hope to accomplish with having this conversation, and you hear the buzzword, courageous conversation. Again, this is why I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to have the chance to speak and to have a voice. This is something that I think in accomplishing what we're doing today, this is an accomplishment within itself. So not only just having the conversation, definitely continuing the conversation and bringing awareness. So once we are aware of something, we can do something about it. So my hope is that we accomplish an awareness for everyone who's here, and a ripple effect will occur. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kishon?
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Baston, everyone here. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is really, you know, such an awesome responsibility beyond the classroom and beyond some of the other jobs in the other positions of parenthood and for myself, fatherhood and being a husband and all the other things that we have here. It's such an awesome responsibility to impress upon this student body, this diverse student body, that, you know, not only is trust and legitimacy fragmented right now in police community relations, but you know, at the same time, we have to really impart on the avenues of our own personal health. So, you know, I've been here for 11 years now. I'm sorry, since 2011, so 9 years. And I work in the criminal justice department. I also am an 18-year veteran of law enforcement. So for me, it's an interesting sort of juxtaposition being an African-American male and also being in the law enforcement profession. What I hope to accomplish today is to really, again, impress upon those that are within earshot of this and beyond that, you know, the police are here to help, and we have to change some things, but by and large, I know the reasons that I became a police officer, and I know that what I do every day really is not an us against them mentality, and that's the word I want to spread, because the police are the community, and the community are the police, and that's been the mantra since Robert Peel invented policing in the modern life. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to again interacting with my fellow panelists and everyone on this talk.
Thank you so much. Burton?
Hi everybody, I'm Burton Charles. I'm the evening and weekend coordinator here at Rock Community College. And today I would like to see from this a continuous conversation. I would like everybody to sit back and after this is done to think about not what's just been transpired, what's been going on in media and what's been going on in our life, just to know that, you know, we should speak to one another, so when this is done, we continue this. We bring this to the light because, you know, in some, me being a person that's worked at college for like 20 years, there have been issues where I've said, I actually not said anything. But after this conversation, I want people to speak up and to have this conversation and say, you know, why or how or what can we do to make things better. So I hope, you know, works out for everybody. And thank you for having me, Dr. Baston and Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Burton. And we just want you to turn up your dial a little bit on your audio. Appreciate you, sir. Jason.
Can you hear me now?
Just a little bit loud. All right, Jason.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Melissa and Dr. Baston, for having me a part of this conversation. My name is Jason Tomlinson. I am the confidential assistant to the president. And I really hope from this conversation, people walk away educated. And this conversation is sort of the start of the snowball. And the snowball, as it continues to roll, it gets larger and larger. And with the education piece, I hope that folks continue to be educated, but also that's where you understand what your responsibility is, because we all have a part to play. And then we get to work. So I hope that this conversation sparks those things, and the snowball continues to grow.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, all of our panelists. All of you are very accomplished people. You have wonderful academic and work histories. So I mean you no disrespect by not referring you to your professorial titles or any of your titles. I'm actually using your first names because I want this to be conversational. And you know, this is a conversation. You know, just imagine, all to the panelists, just imagine all of us are just having a conversation, just everybody else is listening in, all right? So I just want you to feel comfortable in that way. So let me start with a real basic question, and is, how are you feeling and thinking about everything that we've seen in the news and personally experienced over the last few months, given the pandemic, the racial disparities that have been spotlighted by sort of what we've seen with the lethal police brutality, and also, and that's not new, quite frankly, but you know, even a lot of this has been the focus of the recent protests. So as an individual, as a human being, as a person who's working, who's managing all these multiple things and trying to kind of keep it all in your headspace, how are you managing all of these mixed emotions? This time I'm going to start with Shamika.
The way that I'm managing right now is I've been staying very productive. I'm working on 3 publication projects. I'm coordinating with an editor for a project I think is coming out at Columbia University. I'm still teaching summer sessions, so I was grading research papers earlier. I've got some more to do. I think finding whatever is going to give you peace or keep you at peace, you know, having to protect your wellness is important. And so I'm live in New York City. I'm in Harlem right now at my home. My mother's in Rockland County. I was at her home for 3 months. And so I just got back to the city today. And, you know, being able to get tested, know what's going on, you know, all of that is important. Self-care is critical, but also staying aware of what is happening. You know, I'm paying just as much attention to Ghislaine Maxwell and everything going on with Epstein and, you know, the horrificness of all that. Making sure that I check in with loved ones, check in with students. I've had students who were sick from COVID or had relatives who were sick. And so, you know, it's a lot to manage, but it's important to protect space, but also advocate when necessary for people who are having a hard time and understanding that this is just an unprecedented circumstance. But I still feel that, you know, in times of despair, there are moments of inspiration that we should all tap into. And so that's what I've been doing, and it keeps me busy.
Thank you. Zenya.
Okay, so I'm going into my social work frame of thinking at this point, right? I've been comparing it to the 7 stages of grief, honestly. So when we're talking about anxiety and fear, because, we have family members who have been affected by so much, whether it's a disparity in health, whether it's getting tested, whether it's ensuring that your loved ones are okay. Then there's a heaviness. There can be a heaviness that comes with that. One of the things that I know has been giving me some peace, and many may be able to relate, is that what we've been feeling, what we've been working towards is out in the open and getting media coverage, etc. So there are voices that are now being amplified. So that gives me a sense of hope. So we go through this cycle, and at times I really have to piggyback off of what Shamika said, that sense of peace is going to be important. And this is something that I've had to navigate my whole life when it comes to something has happened to someone in the community, someone I know personally, and then having to advocate and then step back, get my center in order to continue the work. So that is what I can compare it to. And again, it's a cycle, but it's so important for that peace and that re-energizing and rejuvenation of ourselves in order to continue the work that we need to do. And I have charged myself. Not everybody has charged themselves with the social equity and the social justice connection. But because I have charged myself, it's really, really important that I continue the work, whether it's my life's work, whether it's my interactions on a daily one-on-one. So I'm very conscious of that. And I understand that I need my peace and I need my rejuvenation, but then to go out and continue the work.
Thank you so much. Jason, you're primarily responsible for our external affairs. And we were out with the Spring Valley Collaborative, out meaning in this virtual space, with about 30 leaders from around the county. You shared a little bit of your sentiments about kind of dealing with sort of Black Lives Matter and all the other things that you're faced with in your family, everything. Can you share a little bit with our audience some of what you shared with the folks in the collaborative? Because I thought that was very helpful in framing.
Yeah, it's rough. I'ma just be honest. It's a little rough because I come from somewhere where many people don't have opportunities like I have. And to come from the circumstances that I come from and the place I come from, I shouldn't have some of the things that I have, or I shouldn't be in some of the realms that I find myself in. So for me, I feel like I have a responsibility to pay it back and bring others up as much as I can and show them a different way of life. But I live in Newburgh now. All my family's in Queens, and it's an 1.5-hour drive. And I travel often to see my mom and my family, to handle business. And I see a lot of police during that drive. And it's just a agonizing thing whenever I see a police car that I immediately have a checklist in my head of turn on the gospel, turn the radio off, make sure I'm doing, like, there's a whole checklist that goes into that just seeing a cop car. And I watch a lot of CNN, so that doesn't help that it's continuously in my face. So I try to read books, and thank God I cut hair, so that helps me relieve a little stress. But it is challenging a bit because, you know, when I have on a suit and tie, I'm looked at in the street in one perspective, or folks will interact with me one way when they see me in my suit, my tie, my dress shirt. But if I'm in some sweatpants and a t-shirt and sneakers and I'm going to Walmart, the interaction might be a little bit different. I'm the same person. I'll speak the same, I will interact the same, but just how I'm engaged is different. And understanding that some of these things is nothing new. What happened to George Floyd is nothing new. It's just that now it's on TV. And COVID, since we're all home, it's forced us to really dial in and to really, like, we can't shake it by, oh, well, we got work to do, or we got to go here, we got to go. No, we're stuck. Like, we're at home. So now the world is focused on what's taking place. And, you know, we've all heard the term white privilege. And I said to one of my colleagues, is this Black privilege? Like, to be able to have this conversation in this way openly, which is something that, like Dr. Richardson said, like, it's courageous. Like, this really takes courage to have this conversation like this, because this is not something that we've had for a long time. So I think to understand that we all just have a part to play, and understanding that my part is to pay it back, and that I hold that responsibility for young Black and brown kids that look just like me, that go to RCC, that don't go, that I walk around the block and see them, like, I know, like, I look at them like that's me. So I just walk and know that I have that responsibility. And I just hope that the rest of the world starts to see that everybody has a part to play.
Thank you, Jason. Fabiola, what do you think about sort of what you're hearing and what you're feeling?
Wow, I'm trying to contain. Thanks so much, Jason, for sharing that, because, you know, I have Black brothers and cousins and fathers, and it is hard. And a lot of them are in law enforcement, and they are in this divide of blue and Black, if you understand what I'm saying. And it just reminds me that, you know, when I had my first child, my mother and my grandmother had a ceremony for me, and it was almost like an initiation ceremony. And what they did was induct me into the club that the child that I gave birth to was a reflection of my commitment to serve all children in the community. And it wasn't just for me to work to the benefit of my own self and my own returns, but now that I am in this secret society and I've joined this club of motherhood, it is my personal responsibility, just like Zenya said, to make sure that all kids and all people everywhere are okay. And so I carry that burden, and I don't look at it as much as a burden, but as an opportunity, because exactly what Jason said. Right now, I'm sitting in my house talking to you, a diverse platform, from the comforts of being employed, which many people are not right now, right? COVID-19 hit, and only 1 out of 5 Black people had the capability to work remotely from home, right? And I'm one of those people. Right? So this is an opportunity, right? And with the responsibility to make sure that those who don't have platforms, those who don't have voices, that I could help reach the audiences that they can't reach, that I could help share the stories that they themselves can't share. And although it's heavy, I feel very privileged to be able to do that. And I recognize that that privilege came at the sacrifice of others before me. Because just like Shamika said, being the first woman of color to be granted tenure, you've opened the door now for other women of color to not have to be the first, right? Because it was too long for something like that to happen. And what I hope to continue to engage is exactly that level of openness where people can see their color, understand who they are, but then treat them how humans should be treated, right? And not just treat someone a certain way because of their color, but treat them a certain way and understanding what that color means to them and what that color may have done for their experience in how they've been socialized, in how they've been educated, and how they have access, and how they've been engaged, but then understand now and almost be agile with themselves to treat people now with the humanity that we all deserve to be treated. So again, thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. And that's just what I charge myself with. That's what I commit to, because I recognize for me to be here is because many sacrifices had to have happened before me. And so I have to continue to sacrifice so others behind me can continue to grow as well.
Thank you so much. Kishon, so you find yourself as a husband, a father, a professor, a police officer, a Black man. You find yourself with all of these sort of different aspects of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and you're teaching criminal justice. So you're preparing the next group of those who will actually be engaged in the criminal justice field. So there's a lot, like I guess folks want to lean in to hear what you got to say, but you've heard sort of the other panelists, but like, I want to ask the question to you in a bit of a different way. You know, oftentimes we don't recognize John Henryanism syndrome. This idea that you have to be the one that's the exceptional and you've got to go above and beyond. And so John Henry was this mythical figure that ultimately was going to outrun, in terms of building the railroad, faster than the machine. And that was going to be so that he would be able to save the workers, all of the jobs of everybody. And so, of course, he went down there and he did that. He actually beat the machine at building the railroad tracks, but then died of a heart attack because of what happened. So I say that to you, that now, you know, a lot of this sort of responsibility oftentimes is kind of thrust on us in many ways. How do you feel, how are you doing with the midst of all of this? And sort of, how do you think about all of the different dimensions of your particular experience?
Well, yeah, it is, you know, you can lean in for this, Dr. Baston, but I'll say this, you know, this moment that we're in, this moment in time is both painful and personal for me. I decided long ago that, you know, I'm not going to compromise my convictions as an African-American male for the sake of being a police officer, and then vice versa. I'm unapologetic for any of the choices that I've made in terms of career decisions, in terms of my journey. I'm not going to apologize for any of it. I just harken back in my life and my own journey as a child. Not too many people know this, but you know, our provost gave me my first job, right? So I don't want to age you, Dr. Deere, but when I was 14 years old, she gave me a job as a camp counselor, and at Orange Community College, and you know, fast forward 25 years, here we are in the same community. So when you look at law enforcement and my, as I described, juxtaposition, even undreamt dreams have come true for a lot of people. Does change need to happen? Absolutely. Our barometer has always been numbers, whether it be test scores for educators, whether it be summonses for state troopers and highway cops, arrests for crime-ridden neighborhoods. But you know, at the same time, we didn't know what we were doing and what we were solving and how we were going about our days and doing business in these communities. There was no connection. And when you talk about diversity and inclusion, you know, diversity is about numbers. Just like number of summonses issued to Black people, number of summonses issued to white people. All of those things occur, but when you look at the person and the quality of life crime, you know, does the neighborhood need that type of enforcement? my whole goal in policing was I worked as a rookie cop in a very mixed neighborhood. $1 million homes with actors and actresses, and very, very depressed neighborhoods. And my goal, just as a young, rank of police officer, I wanted the people in that rich neighborhood to feel as safe as the people in the poorer neighborhoods. Seemingly an exercise that was a Herculean at times, but when we look at and we parallel that to now our community at Rockland Community College, the diversity that we have is about numbers. Shamika, first Black English professor, tenured. That's great, but now where is the inclusion part, right? We have the diversity, that's one piece of it, but where is the inclusion? What committees are you on? What seats at what tables are you at? And where is your influence? I didn't grow up with a lot of African-American influence in my life. I grew up in Middletown, New York. Jason, 20 minutes from where you are now in Newburgh. And my mother, who's somewhere on this panel today, was one of 2 African-American teachers in my high school, in Middletown High School, where she taught for many years. So I had 0 Black teachers. In fact, I don't know if Shelley Jallo's on here. I invited her, Dr. Richardson, you know her. Dr. Richardson and I went to college together. We got our doctorates at the same time. Believe it or not, and probably you never heard this from me even, and as long as I've known you, I had my first Black teacher as a 35-year-old doctoral candidate, and didn't realize I didn't have a Black teacher until I had a Black teacher. And so when Dr. Baston said during the student panel, where you sit is where you stand, and that resonated with me, I realized where I was and what I accomplished without having that Black influence. Now, Jason, I mean, listen, I don't know the circumstances and your interactions with the police, but when I go out and I speak for myself, I'm one man in a very large police department. There's other members, I don't want to divulge them, but there's other members of my agency on this call that are also professors here. Our hearts are in the right place. I can speak for them, right? I can speak for those folks that are retired. Our hearts are in the right place. Are there bad doctors? Are there bad teachers? There's bad in every profession. And there's bad police officers. They're out there. But I mean, I hope that answers your question.
Well, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, there are good and bad in everything. But what is important is this idea of giving voice. Because what happens oftentimes is that the platform to speak and to actually express one's opinions and feelings is not there. So I do always say where you sit is where you stand. So if in fact you've never been personally the victim of oppression, personally the victim of sort of racial animus, then the conversation about why it's important becomes a little bit less for you because it doesn't impact you personally. And that's when we have the conversations of privilege. If you don't recognize that things are happening to others, it's not enough to say, well, because it didn't happen to me, I'm not as interested in that. Because if we are all connected and we are all part of the human family, what happens to you happens to me, what happens to me happens to you. And I want to now kind of go into the RCC community most specifically. So Burton, you have mentioned that you have been at our college for nearly 20 years or more than 20 years. Is that not right, Burton? Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences at the college and in terms of sort of where we're doing well in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion and where we could do better?
Hi, Dr. Baston. Can you hear me? Can everybody
hear
hear
you perfectly now, buddy. You're okay. In good shape.
Just want to be sure. I've been at the campus for since I stepped off the bus, off the 93, I started at RCC in 96. So I've been here well over 20 years. I can, in one of the panels, the last panel session that you had with the students, one thing that hurt me, that one said, how many different professors of color have you had? Being a student of an alumni of RCC, I've had over 3 teachers of color. And to hear that not a lot is going on today, it's alarming to me. We do have diverse groups on campus. We do have different factions. We have different, religions, but I feel that there could be more. I feel that they need, just like with this panel, we need to promote, diversity more. We also need to promote sensitivity, because things that we say, things that we say could hurt somebody else. So we need to look at different routes like that. I myself, being on campus, I have experienced, little bouts of discrimination. And in the past, I've kept I've remained silent about it. And it's not until I got older and, more, I feel more educated, I've spoken about it. But this is the thing, we can't just remain silent, and we can't just, let the problem go by, because even after this, the problem still is going to be around. Our job now is, how can we approach this with new eyes and see what we can do for everybody to, how could I say, how could everybody could cohabitate with each other, And that's how I feel. It's just, there's a lot of things that I didn't say in the past, but even in the light of what's been going on with COVID and the wrongful deaths and the injustice, I feel like I had to sit on this panel and I had to say, this has to stop. We have to all work together, because especially as educators, our goal is to educate our future. So us as educators, and it doesn't stop at RCC, we have to make sure that when we leave our jobs or when we're at home with our families, we need to spread the message of diversity, peace, being as human beings. And it's just crazy. I just look at it through, it's just an eyes open and trying to see what we can do is better for our people.
Thank you, Burton. And I think, I want to come to Shamika now. Shamika, you too have been at the college for a long period of time. How many Black faculty members do you get to actually coalesce with on a regular basis in your time at the college?
Well, including the librarians and the counselors, because Maureen is retired and Kim Weston is still at the library. Well, not at the library, but at the library. Let me see. So what happened was that when I arrived full-time into the English department, I was told about this one person who was brought in, who was on the full-time tenure track, and that the word that I received from various senior folks was that that person was pushed out by members of the English department, and they were run out, essentially, and they left. I've heard about other Black faculty in particular in other departments, whether they were tenure track or were full-time temp, who for whatever reasons felt very unwelcome and have since left. I know there was somebody in criminal justice, and I think there was somebody in, the way all the departments have changed over the past couple of semesters, I can't keep track, but I think there were a couple of other people that were eyeing the possibility of being full-time or tenure track, and then turned around and said, I'm out of here. And I remember when, I had great mentors at the college. In particular, I would say, I don't think anybody's still, Suzanne Phillips was the Dean of Students. She's not there anymore, Dr. Phillips. There were some people that were very helpful. Leah Lee, Dr. Lee is amazing, and she was my first mentor. And, you know, people said, Shamika, don't make them push you out. And I was being recruited by other universities, in particular, one out west in another time zone, and one up north, both in which I would be able to do graduate teaching and have the sexy office and all this. And they said, don't leave until you're ready to leave. And I wasn't ready to leave, but things were just really weird when I got there. And there were a number of reasons why that was happening. I did feel supported by the few, and I was especially supported by my family. And so because of that, I didn't have the same kind of experiences that I think my predecessors had. But I can say that in terms of what has worked is, I know Dr. Wood had a commitment. There was the, I think it was the President's Diversity Council or something like that. And I don't remember who all was on it, but there was this push to try to have more inclusive conversations. The change from PDA to multicultural studies, I thought multicultural studies was a good idea. I didn't think that disbanding PDA was a good idea because pluralism and diversity is not the same as multiculturalism. And that was something that Dr. Padilla, who was also, I think, my first office mate, hi, Elaine, you know, talking about what she championed and what others in the department had championed for PDA curriculum. One of my biggest concerns has been with the culture of the institution, and that is what I've also been hearing from students over the years in terms of, I think it's the way that RCC was described is as a country club. And the way it was described is it's Harvard on the Hudson, and in terms of who goes there, you know, if your family is already working there, you have a shoe-in. If you are members of certain local community groups, you have a shoe-in. And so I was a complete outsider because I wasn't even a Rocklander. And so it was a different experience because I had to learn the terrain of what Rockland is and then what community college students are like in comparison to my previous experience teaching at four-year institutions. So there was this steep learning curve, but I was supported by Martha also, was very supportive. And, you know, I did have support from Neil Kreitzer. The late Remy Jensen was also somebody who was encouraging. You know, I had support from some people that, you know, I didn't need a lot of friends, but the friends that were supportive were helpful. Joe Perrone was also very helpful. I see Dr. Perrone in the chat. There was something to be said about the way in which we get marginalized or silenced. And so, for example, there was the previous Dr. Roger Davis, who is now President Davis. He had been attacked on emails that went out to the entire college. And he had a statement saying, no one is speaking up about this being a problem. Maybe they believe it. Maybe it must be true that they believe these statements. And in Faculty Senate, it got interpreted as he's calling us racists. And then people, it's in the minutes, raised their hands and said, I am not a racist. How dare he say this? And if he can't prove it, he should be fired. That was a complete flip. And so I had said, well, I've experienced bias on campus. And then Cece, who is now retired, also said that she experienced prejudice and had some awkward experiences on campus. And it's something to be said about how the conversation gets cultivated. I think also with curriculum development in terms of recruitment, there's something to be said about the courses that aren't running. So we're a Hispanic serving institution, but where are our Hispanic art classes, Hispanic history? Where is the, you know, the Latino Lit class hasn't run in a number of years. I'm revising the curriculum for that. You know, who's teaching these multiculturalism classes? What is their training? Once upon a time when I was here, people just taught in areas that they liked. You know, you like traveling to Ireland, okay, you teach Irish literature, not because you have a degree in it, but because, you know, there was not much oversight. And so, you know, there's something to be said about some of the things, the horrific things that students have reported to me over the years that they've heard from their professors in class, things like women don't belong in business. or, you know, there is a such thing as reverse racism, or, you know, there are these ways that it becomes very hostile in the classroom. And I tried to deconstruct all of that in my curriculum, but depending on who's teaching the class and how the oversight is happening, you really don't know. And it would be useful. I mean, the African history courses and African American history, we talked about that. David Lukander and I talked about that going all the way back to maybe 2010. I mean, it's not a new conversation with learning communities. We were talking about that. So, you know, there's something to be said about, you know, the way that the institutional change may be slow, significantly missing the mark in some areas in terms of what we're supposed to be doing or what we think we're doing, and is it really effectively translating? I know that the BSU had spoken to various other club members, and we shared that information. I think I sent it out to all faculty. Nothing got done. It was completely just, you know, okay. I think they agreed to the interfaith part because we talked about an interfaith center, because we don't have just students from Abrahamic backgrounds on campus. But from what I understand, some people said, no, my religious life office is mine and you can't have it. And that was the beginning and the end of the conversation. I'm not sure where they are with, you know, some of the other infrastructural changes, but if we're going to be inclusive, then we have to really be inclusive. And that means doing and staying with the commitment. It can't just be faces and spaces, because that's not institutional support and that's not infrastructural change.
Thank you so much. I mean, listen, I've talked to a few Black presidents who came through Rockland, and that's exactly what happened to them. They felt like they were not really supported by the community by and large, and they felt that they could do better, and they did. They all went off and became presidents of other colleges because they did not feel that they could be embraced or supported by this community. And that's hard to hear, but it is a fact that if you don't hear the voices of the people who have gone through the experiences that were visited upon them, you wouldn't know it. You would just assume that, you know, it's them, not us, so to speak.
If I may follow up with that very quickly, we lose a lot of talent that way. And that's a part of the concern for me, is that there are talented people that get pushed out. And so then, you know, it's a disservice to us. But I think that there's more about what people perceive racism to be versus what racism actually is. And so there's this significant disconnect in the discourse, because they're not seeing burning crosses. They don't think there's racism. And so then it's a matter of trying to translate what it is that's actually happening and how it's being labeled versus how they're interpreting it and discrediting it. So I'll stop there.
Perfect. Zenya, you're an adjunct and you've been with us now relatively a short time. Do you feel that you have mentors or people at the college that can support you, anyone specifically, and also, are there people of color that are able to be supportive to you that you have been able to connect with?
I can honestly say when I first began, the person that I was able to connect with was Professor Rock. She definitely just touched base with me. She wanted to ensure that I was ready and willing and able. So I did appreciate that connection. Any questions I had, she was available. I think that because if I am here a short period of time, I'm still in an observing phase. I'm observing, I'm taking everything in. I am really trying to get a sense of what the RCC community and culture have to offer. So I continue to be, again, learning and just absorbing everything. So as time progresses, my hope and my thoughts are, let's see what happens. I want to continue. Having this openness is important to me. Being able to have this conversation, being able to ensure that my voice is being heard, that's important. So again, I'm here and I'm observing for the most part. When it comes to I stay student focused. And when we talk about the students that we're serving and then who they will be serving, it's really important that there's an understanding. And I make that very clear that education is social justice. It's a social justice issue. It is a social justice subject. Everything is connected to a social justice piece, and you all are going to be a part of it. And when you leave my classroom, I want to be proud to say you are my colleagues. So that is the energy and that is the lens that I bring into the classroom. And I'll continue to do so. Again, my openness and my willingness, my hope is that having these continuous conversations will ensure that that support is continuous throughout my stay at the college. So I definitely appreciate just this venue.
Excellent. Kishon, you're also a long-term sort of adjunct. You've been now with the college for many, many years in that role. Do you see a pathway for yourself at the college beyond your current situation? You're on mute.
I do. I definitely do. I didn't always, but I certainly do now under your leadership and your direction. You know, there's the ebbs and flows of at least my department specifically. For me in the beginning was more struggles than celebrations, and you know, with law enforcement being in a visible crisis, I think those students, regardless of color, that aspire to be in law enforcement really need a sort of safe place with expertise and people within the police department and academics to come and just exude that positive energy. And again, it wasn't always there. You know, thankfully, you know, we have new leadership. The department is growing and diversifying, and the college is growing and diversifying. So, you know, like I said, diversity is not the answer to racism, but this inclusion is you know, ensuring that seat in the room, which is paramount, and allows us to think holistically. And not, you know, and not myopic. So, but that's nothing else than a result of, you know, your vision, the vision of the provost, you know, Fabiola and Dr. Sudhir, and just, you know, us that are in the game, the 98 people that are in this conversation, has to, you know, necessitate throughout the entire community, and that's what it's all about.
Thank you so much. Fabiola, when people say, you know, why do we have to say Black Lives Matter? All lives matter. What do you say about that? How do you, I mean, I heard the students talk about it, but how do you address those who say, you know, yeah, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, we all matter, everyone matters. Why do we have to be so, isn't it racist to say Black Lives Matter? Fabiola.
That is a great question. And I think the first point that I make is, number one, to breathe, right? Because you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. You have to give them the opportunity to express themselves and to understand, just like Kishon said, that a lot of people, it is because they have good intentions and they don't want to be seen as some level of extreme versus the other. And so I keep it simple, you know. I grew up in the time where everything was about environmentalism, right? It was, don't use hairspray because you're gonna ruin the ozone, right? It was, oh my goodness, the whales are dying, right? And it's simple. When you're talking about whales, you're not talking about kangaroos in Australia, right? You're not talking about the deer that we find hit across the road all the time. You're talking about the whales. So that is the exact example that I use with them. Black lives matter, not in place of other lives that matter. right? But because all lives matter, we have to pay attention to the fact that Black people are disappropriately being eradicated off of the planet, particularly in the United States, by excessive, not only police brutality, but economic disenfranchisement, right? Because people are not given the same opportunity to reach their full potential. And I help them understand the experiences, and I point them out, because I love to point people out to points of reference. You know, I'm not gonna tell you, we have Siri, we have Alexa, we have Google. Use any one of them and you do your own research. But it is always with the position of, people say that, and I don't think there is malice aligned with it. I think it is to be inclusive. I think it's for them to show a point, but I think it's also our responsibility to now bring up the fact that Black Lives Matter is a movement for humanity in order to build community. And Black Lives Matter not only to Black people, but it matters to everyone, because injustice in one place, right, threatens, right, just, you know, threatens everywhere. It threatens everyone in every place. And so when I hear all lives matter, you're absolutely correct. All lives do matter. Now help me stop Black lives dying for no reason. Help me stop Black people who are capable, who are educated, but can't get good jobs, right? Help me stop Black people who don't have access to education, therefore can't get good jobs to feed their families, right? And can't be contributing members in their community. So help me, because that is in your All Lives Matter. So let's take a little time right now to focus on the Black ones that are suffering right here and right now. And thanks to COVID-19, everyone gets to see it.
Thank you so much for that. I just feel that so much of this conversation is so helpful, not only to give voice to it, but also to see the sort of connection with the practical things. Now, I've read an article recently about sort of things you shouldn't say, right? So this is what I read, you know, I don't remember which periodical it was, but it was a periodical that said, things you shouldn't say to tick Black people off. Right. So trying to give a message to your white coworkers that, listen, you know, I know you may feel very bad about everything and you really want to, let me give you some tips, some things. Don't say this didn't help, you know. So if there was something that you could share for your colleagues, your white colleagues, these are things you don't have to say. We get it. Okay, because I think it would be helpful for folks. So I'm putting the panel on the spot. But like I said, everybody else is listening in. We're just having our own little private conversation. So everybody else is listening. Jason.
Oh, perfect. Because I wanted to start because I just really want to say this is an opportunity for Black folks on RCC campus to really share our perspective and share things that we've been through and some of the things we go through on a day-to-day now. Like I said in the beginning, it's really to educate and for folks to be able to walk away with something. I'm glad that I've had experiences with many cultures and many races, going to Catholic school and interacting with white folks and Asian folks. Like, I'm glad that I have experiences from where I come from in the hood and to have experiences up on the hill. I'm just going to be frank. But things you should not say, Joe Perone, you should not call someone Wakanda lady. That is something you should not say. And I'm sorry that but I'm a little ticked off because this is really a platform for us to share. And that right there is white privilege. All of these comments that you're having on this stage, it is not necessary. And there's some things that just shouldn't be said or that should be said in a more appropriate place and in a more appropriate way. But to call someone Wakanda lady, that is something you should not say. And that's disrespectful. And I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you, Jason. Burton.
Wow. I agree with Jason totally. there are some things that people can't say to other people. For example, you know, and I'm just gonna say this right now. I have had one particular incident on campus where somebody said, I'm a handsome man of my race. You cannot say that to me, because that is, one, disrespectful. Two, we're at a college, so you need to have some type of education. A second thing is assuming that it's like somebody will come up to me and say, yo, 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 what's up? Or, you know, we're in a professional environment. And I'm not talking about a student doing that. I'm talking about a staff member. And I had to one day sit down with a person and say, you know, you could say hello to me. How are you? Don't assume because I'm Black, I naturally like hip hop, rap music. I'm eclectic. I love everything. But don't assume by how I look is how you can resonate with me. And I agree with Jason. There's things that shouldn't be said. But you know what? That's why we have this platform today. So people know. I'm going to keep it right there.
That's okay. Zenya.
Okay, so one of the things that I have heard in just being me and being in the spaces that I'm in, and in trying to have a courageous conversation from the very beginning, I don't see color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it. I treat everyone the same. And then where I go is the difference between equality and equity and social justice. So when you say you don't see color, there is a narrative that you are erasing. And it's so important that my color brings experience. My narrative brings perspective. My feelings, just knowing we were having this conversation, it was like, wow, okay, we're gonna sit, we're gonna talk, we're gonna share. And, you know, there's a trust level that then says, I can't speak when you say I do not see color, I treat everyone the same. And although that may be true, but if you're saying you don't see color, then what are you saying about the experiences of the people you're encountering and you are teaching and you are serving? Coming from, I went to a predominantly white institution for my master's degree, and I came from a historically Black college for women. So making that shift from being in a space that has continuously enforced the importance of the Black experience, to come into a place where many didn't know of the Black experience, yet they were going into a field of social work. It was really, really difficult to hear the conversations, but I treat everyone the same and I don't see color is something that is it's just something that, you know, you don't say, because you want to be able to allow for the full narrative, the full story, the full experience to come out in your interaction. And so that's something that I would add.
Thank you. Fabiola. You're still on mute. All right.
Yeah, I think when it comes to things not to say, I think it's almost like general across the board. You know, I always say to people, be intentful, right? Don't assume people understand. You understand what point you're trying to get across. And if your position is to offend, then stand by it, right? But if your position is not to offend, then understand what you're saying. And that goes to whomever you're speaking with and whatever their gender, their color is. It's just about being mindful when you talk to people, understanding that everyone has a story. It's like how you would speak, you know, in a setting with someone who's just been attacked. It's the same thing, right? You don't just come out and just start talking to them a specific way. You don't just come in and impose your body and your position on them. And so when I have different friends of mine who happen to be African-American males. And I call them because they just saw someone who looked exactly like them get murdered on television, right? I don't have to say, are you okay? I know you're not okay, right? It's just almost letting someone know that I see you, and whenever, if you ever want to talk, want to share something, I am here for you. I think a lot of people say certain things because they might not know what to say. And it's okay to be silent. It's okay to just let someone know that you as a person, you stand with them in humanity. You don't have to show someone. We have a tendency to want to make ourselves all alike because it makes us comfortable. But celebrating differences is what's exciting. It's what brings about innovation. It's what brings about change and progress. So being comfortable with yourself allows you to be comfortable with other people and all the differences and the varieties that they come with. You don't have to be so relatable. It actually gets pretty boring. You know, it's about encouraging and celebrating that difference and understanding that everyone has something to contribute because of their color, because of their age, because of their skin, because where they grew up, because of all those things that they have experienced or have that you don't. And that's why you should take the time out to celebrate that, to encourage that, and not try to group people in the, we're just alike. No, we are not. I don't want to be. We are very different, and I love you, and I love that. And we should all be comfortable with that.
Kishon.
So there's been a lot of conversations. I mean, offline, and I'm looking at, I'm following through these chats here, and you know, I think this is a passionate topic. I mean, people, we're a melting pot and a microcosm on this, you know, now 94 people here that represents all walks of life. I think there's a fine line between someone's ignorance and just out and outright or overtly speaking about something racial. And when I, for about the last 5 or 6 years, and I'll be as cryptic as I could, but for about the last 5 or 6 years, I've taught at the Haverstraw campus. And when I first got there, seemingly, I'm an Orange County kid, but seemingly, I knew that it wasn't the size or stature of the main campus. It was a small building in the heart of Haverstraw. And when it was referred to as, by someone else in the department, as Harlem on the Hudson, I had to take a step back and say, wow, I was just confused as to why it was referred to in that fashion. And I had some questions. I talked to, you know, Zenya. I think we were in school at the time, and, you know, I didn't really have those people to kind of reach out to, but, you know, the fact that that was allowed to happen and seemingly, you know, very loosely addressed, really didn't fare well for me as one of the few African-American males in my department. It's a sad day when, you know, when we've all been in positions as, and again, this is your setting, Dr. Baston, taking everybody, and then we have listeners. We've all been in situations where, you know, someone in mixed company will say to us, well, what do you think about this situation? Like we're supposed to, you know, sort of wrap up the entire Black experience in one fell swoop and speak for the, you know, the Black college presidents around the country, the Black deans around the country, the Black, you know, administrative assistants and confidential assistants, the Black equity and inclusion. You're supposed to speak for everybody at once. And, you know, we've got charges to be ourselves and speak for ourselves and not take on that. I mean, this is a great responsibility. I mean, I like being here, but I can speak for Kishon Hickman and my experiences. I can look to you as a mentor and an experienced educator and those in this room. But I can't speak for everybody. And the fact that, being on the receiving end of, that sort of, in my perception, racially charged comment is something that caused me a great pause. But if I leave, they win. If I leave and quit being a contributing member to this community, the people that underscore those comments win.
I asked the students in our panel, and thank you, Kishon, I asked the students in our panel, well, given that sort of we're in this space and time where we're dealing with the pandemic, we're dealing with protests because of structural racism and all of its attendant circumstances and consequences, how do you find hope? What are you hopeful about? What are you, from an aspirational perspective? We've now said, I don't think we've probably ever had this conversation at this campus before. So to be able to have this moment in time where we actually raise the voices of a population at the community that are just sort of blended in, but really do have a distinctive set of challenges and thoughts and opinions. What are you most hopeful about as we're in this phase in the development of our college, because we are striving to become a more inclusively excellent institution? What are you hopeful about? And this time we will start with Shamika. What are you hopeful about?
I'm writing my notes. Okay, so what am I most hopeful about? Well, the first thing, this is going to tie in very neatly. My paternal grandfather, my late paternal grandfather, he died before I was born, World War II veteran. His name was John Henry. And I am the first, my generation, my family, we're the first ones. It's me, my brother, and a couple of my cousins that were all around the same age, because I was born in '76. We were the first generation born after Jim Crow. So every generation prior to mine in my family had water fountains and bathrooms with labels on it. And even if my family had been in Harlem since the 1930s, 1940s, we still had family in the South. And so whenever you went South, they knew what the deal was. When they went to visit relatives for vacation or whatever, they knew that the terrain was different. It also caused there to be a lot of chasms in the family, because my parents weren't keen on having my brother or me experience what they experienced. And so we became a bit isolated from some of our country cousins, if you'll and permit me. There are some that I'm still getting acquainted with because they're all the way in Louisiana, and my father wanted nothing to do with going back to the old memories that would be triggered from what he experienced since 1945 when he was born there. And I say that because the hope that I have is, I told my mother just yesterday, I said, look at how far we have come since 1966, right? I mean, even with all of the obstacles and all of the hurdles and all of the pitfalls, there's a lot that we had accomplished just in our family, and I grew up with a tremendous amount of class privilege. And so because of that, I had a lot of blind spots about like this quote, Black experience, like, what does that mean? Because they're Black experiences. And there's something to be said about the way that we all can find space in the conversation to share what our experiences are. I think it's a learning opportunity for Black people in terms of the African diaspora in general. But then also for people who were not from those communities to learn about maybe what some of those ugly truths are. And so things like the statues and the monuments, us having conversations about, you know, who are these heroes that you worship? You know, why do you worship these people? Why are they so important to your narrative? Here are the problems with that narrative. Here's what's left out from that flag context. All of those things, you know, it's like if you were raised thinking that your world is a utopia and a perfect place, and then someone tells you that it's not, and then they tell you all of the awful things that have been happening in this place that you felt was so perfect, it can be very hard to process. There's something about the emotional and psychological disconnections that also happen. And so, you know, my hopefulness, it's not that Jesse Jackson keep hope alive, even though, you know, I mean, there's something to be said about keeping hope alive. But my hopefulness is that, you know, when I'm inspired by my students who are willing to push the narrative forward, even the civil rights movement of the 60s and the 50s was students. It was young people. And so there is a changing of the guard that occurs. And, you know, even I, as somebody who's now considered an elder at 43, you know, what's happening with the younger students, the high school students, you know, they are wanting to push the conversation in a different direction. And we're there, but it's also taking a step back and letting the new seeds that we had planted grow into harvest. And we can't do that if we're still trying to control the conversation and have it reflect our agenda. And so I'm hopeful for the more opportunities that I see with creatives, with academics. You know, people are just changing their narrative, you know, oh, I can't get a movie deal in Hollywood, I'm going to go to YouTube, you know. That was Issa Rae, and now she's, you know, now she's Hollywood. But, you know, she said, I'm going to do my thing. There were other people that, you know, were pushed out of the whatever that institution was, and they found ways around it. So for me, and I know it's quoting Arthur Ashe, racism is not an excuse for failure. It's just a part of the hurdles that you may have to go through, but it can't be, oh, I can't thrive because of racism. No, it just means that your hurdles will be higher and you may have to run faster. And that goes for all of the other isms. And there are so many different institutional biases that are embedded within everything that we know in this society. And no country's perfect. There is no perfect place. Whatever matrix you get on a one-way plane flight ticket to, there's another matrix waiting for you there. And so for me, it's a matter of, we have options. I have Black friends who've left the country. I have Black friends who are planning their roots saying, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Wherever your happy horizon is, we have much privilege in being able to have those conversations and explore our options, either collectively or individually. And so I'm hopeful for that. I know that the brick and the mortar is just the place, but the space is in your heart and in your mind. And that if you're not guided by something else, then it's always going to come back to being flawed in ways that require healing. And I wrote, you know, an essay years ago about the fact that this nation needed a healing and that we need atonement on a variety of things. And this is a part of that conversation, you know, but it requires work. I come from a family of theologians too, by way of Union Theological Seminary, the Riverside Church, Memorial Baptist Church. And the one thing that I grew up with Dr. James A. Forbes was, you know, atonement is work. It's not just, I'm sorry, it's what work am I going to do to make this better? And so we all have work to do. Some of us will be lifting more than others, but everyone has hands in the pot.
Excellent. Everybody put the hand on the pot. I love it. Burton, what are you hopeful about? Hopeful.
I'm hopeful that, to be honest, that everybody's okay. I'm hopeful that, you know, we all will get through this, because Black, white, brown, it doesn't matter. We're all dealing with a pandemic right now. And the best thing right now is for us to all to be together. After this, I'm hopeful that people start talking to each other. And I'm, you know, as Shamika said, you know, we're looking at the educators, we're looking at outside. I'm talking about right now with the campus. I hope we sit down on one day when we're able to speak to each other, or even a phone call. You just talk. And I'm going to say this, and I'll be honest, to my staff members who are Caucasian and stuff, white, you know, if you come up and you have a conversation with me and you feel like things have been, don't be upset about it. Just say, Bert, you know, appreciate, you know, just talk. We don't have to hear no apologies or anything. Today's panel was great just because we got to see things. It's like putting on glasses for the first time. It's like a person who's deaf who can now hear. You're seeing and you're hearing things that you haven't heard before. When people think things are okay, it's not. So I'm hoping this conversation spreads. Continuous conversation. And for us, if we get the message today, then we know this will lead for the future leaders of tomorrow. So this is what I'm hoping. I'm hopeful for the conversation. And like I said, after this, don't be afraid. Don't be embarrassed. We're all people. Okay? That's
Thank
what
you, Bert.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Zenya.
Yes, what I am hopeful for, and I think Shamika did touch on it, are the generations to come. I'm excited. I'm excited. Even in the conversations in the classroom, the fact that we are the ones who will be connecting to the future. You know, we're teaching the future educators. That excites me. That makes me hopeful. The lenses that we bring are going to allow for an openness, an education, and an experience like no other. So that is what I'm hopeful for. I'm hopeful for understanding that it may not happen in my lifetime, and that's okay. It didn't happen in our ancestors' lifetime. And that's okay because we are reaping those benefits. That's what I'm hopeful for. I'm hopeful for the generations to come, the experiences that I get to have with our excited, new, and eager students, and the fact that the work that is being done is not going to be done in vain. Even if I don't see it, somebody is going to reap those benefits. Somebody is going to understand they're standing on others' shoulders, just as I have had to understand that. Just as my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather had to understand that. So that is what I'm hopeful for. And it's okay to know that, okay, it may not happen when I want it to, how I want it to, but I'm staying in my lane. And I understand that there are a number of different lanes I can be in. If I'm not marching, I may be on a panel. If I'm not on a panel, then I may be donating to someone. I may be a philanthropist. So understanding that there are so many lanes, because there was a time where it's like, am I doing enough? We're in this news cycle. Am I doing enough? I know I've made this my life's work. I know I do the community service stuff. Am I doing enough? So understanding that there are many lanes that we can be in. And that's what I'm hopeful for, that we each pick one and we do it to the best of our ability.
Thank you so much. Jason, what you hopeful for?
I am hopeful for a better day. I mean, there is over 90 people on this call, and I see a lot of faces that I interact with on campus. And I'll just say white folks that I interact with who I feel like a seed has been planted. And you can't expect change to just take place in one day, but just the fact that people don't have to be on this call. Like, you chose to click, to come on Zoom, to get your technology, to get your background together. Like, you chose this, so you were very intentional. So the fact that you're on this Zoom call, there's hope. Like that is a clear sign of hope. And I live with this thought that you can't hope for a better day. You have to work towards one. And you'll meet yourself wherever you are. So just because you think you moved someplace, you go somewhere else that you'll change. If your mentality doesn't change, then you won't change. So wherever you go, you're going to meet yourself there. And for folks to be able to walk away with something new and to be able to continue this conversation, I'm hopeful for a better day to come. And there's been a lot of texts that I've received from colleagues who are white, and it's been mixed to receive those texts, because it's like, what do I do with that? Right? When someone says, I'm sorry for the racial discrimination that has happened to your people for all of these years, and I'm sorry for my privilege, and like, so what do I do with that? Like, how do I take that in, or what do I send back? And I think this time has caused us to have uncomfortable conversations, and not in a sense of, I want to make you uncomfortable so you feel bad or you feel away, but it's uncomfortable because it's just something that some people just may not know. So that's uncomfortable. And it's also uncomfortable for us as Black folks to have this free space to share, because we haven't always had that. So I'm embracing this uncomfortable space in hopes that it gets us to that better day, because someone's discomfort allows for conversation, that allows for things to take place. Like that's where that change happens. But if someone just walks away and there's nothing new, there's no education that takes place, there's no enlightenment, then things are just comfortable. Things are just as they always were. So I'm hopeful and grateful that we're able to plant seeds and that we work towards a better day.
Thank you so much. We're down to our last few remaining moments. I want to first invite Fabiola and then Kishon. Fabiola, what are you hopeful about?
I think it's exactly what Jason alluded on, right? We have 95 people on this call, and if we follow the COVID model, that's 950 people that could be impacted by this conversation. So I am hopeful that everyone on this call is going to do exactly that. Is going to take whatever enlightenment or lessons learned that they have and bring it to their audiences, and bring it to how they treat people and how they interact with people. And not only people within the RCC walls, right? Because as a community college, we are the leadership when it comes to academia, social, and integrity within the community. So to kind of filter it out in general where we are, to make sure that those who couldn't be on the call don't not have access or don't not know what you've got from it. Because it's simple. When I speak to my sisters or my friends and I share with them a token or a lesson, it's a lot better received than, I'm gonna pick on you, Elaine, because your face is there, than if Elaine goes to that same group of people to share the same exact message. So I'm counting on everyone that whatever office you sit in at the college, whatever organizations you're in your families, that you are outside of the college in the community, that whatever impacted you in this conversation, pick up the phone, text, email, and share that. Because just like you don't know, they possibly don't know too. And that's what I'm hopeful for, that through that sharing, through conversation, through organic community building, that there will be change in my lifetime, because I need that to happen for my kids.
Thank you so much. Kishon?
Yeah, thank you. I just echoing Fabiola, and you know, I just want to take 10 seconds to acknowledge my wife, who refuses to open her camera simply because she works at Orange Community College and doesn't want to be seen, you know, hanging out with the Fighting Hawks today. But also on the call is my 12-year-old son. And one of the things that I'm hopeful for, because when I was his age, my mother, who I said also I look up to and is my hero, she's on the call as well. She took me to a protest in Middletown, New York, when I was a little younger than my son. And it was for a guy named Jimmy Lee Bruce, who died a very untimely death. I don't know, Middletown people. Dr. Deere, if you're still around, I'm sure you remember this. Jimmy Lee Bruce was killed in the movie theater for making too much noise. He was out of control, acting erratically, and he was murdered by police, off-duty police officers that were doing security at that location. And I was, a boy of about 10 or 12 years old, and I guess it's a long way of saying that was the real day that I said, man, I think I would like to be a police officer, because I know I would never do something like that. B, the only way to change something is to change from within. And as much as the protesters, violent or not, are doing, as much as George Floyd did by losing his life, unfortunately, the change has to come from all of us, no matter the capacity. Whether you're a college president, a provost, an English teacher, you're preparing students for the next level. They're the future. They're the future. So I'm hopeful that my son, who's listening now, has a better experience than me. I'm hoping that he does not have to participate in protests, peaceful or not, because there's nothing left to protest. That's the ideal. The reality is that may not be so, because we still have bad people in all professions. But I hope that I hope that what people get out of this just continues to resonate throughout our campus, throughout our community, throughout the county, and just this not be the finish line for us. Just like we don't want this to be the finish line for our students, we want them to go on to a 4-year school. We want them to go on to life. Let's not have this be the finish line, and increase that visibility for us here. But thank you all. This has been an epic experience for me.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating today. I want to thank the panelists who have been so wonderful with all of their comments and their sharing. It takes a lot of courage to actually sit in the place of being the panelist and opening up your mind, your heart, your experiences. And so I want to say thank you to our panelists. I want to say thank you to Melissa Roy, who is our Chief Diversity Officer of the college, and she is really actively engaged in how we're going to move much of our equity, diversity, and inclusion work moving forward. I just want to give you a couple of final remarks, and I know we're a little over time, but this has been such a wonderful experience for me to be with you today as the president of Rockland Community College, the first Black president of Rockland Community College, and I'm very proud of that, because for 60 years, this college has continued to open up opportunities for people to be the best version of themselves. But in that 60 years, our college, like most colleges around the country, have not always been the best version of themselves. And so we are going to make a very specific commitment to inclusive excellence. And we will be talking in the days, months, weeks ahead of how you, if you're interested, can be a part of what we're calling steps beyond statements. Statements are an important first step, because you have to be able to share a point of view, a position. And so we have gotten our positions from the Faculty Senate has done a part of a resolution, the presidents of the community colleges, the chief student affairs officers, all of those major SUNY entities have put together statements in support of inclusive excellence. And so we are part of that. Even our own board of trustees, I'm so proud that our chairman, Marty Wortendijk, is on the Zoom call today. We're so happy to have you, Chairman Wortendijk, and some of our other trustees have been on and are on, because there is a real commitment by our board to make us not just an excellent institution in some things, but an excellent institution in all things. And it becomes very difficult to argue. Are you against inclusion or are you against excellence? So we are going to be striving to be an institution of inclusive excellence. And so we'll have a working group that will help us look at sort of our structures. We will look at outcomes for our students. We will look at our diversity in terms of our faculty and our staff. We will look at sort of how we build an actual platform to become a stronger college for everybody and a more inclusive college. In addition, we're going to be doing some other things that will promote the employee experience of all employees. We want every employee of our college to have a better experience. And so we're going to be, you'll be hearing in the weeks and months to come, the efforts that we're making to improve the employee experience for everyone. So we're very, very excited about that. So as you have opportunities, I hope you'll get on some of these working committees that are going to help us to improve the employee experience. I hope that you will be a part of that great conversation. Coming up on July 16th, we have a fantastic coffee and conversation, once again, with our Chief Diversity Officer, Melissa Roy. That'll be at 12 noon, and we're going to talk a little bit more detail about our work around steps beyond statements and the new things that will be happening in the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So we've got some extraordinary things that we want to share with you in that regard. And then on July 22nd at 3 p.m., I will be on a conversation with a good friend of mine, Bill Scroggins. He's the president of Mount San Antonio College in California. And we have both actually written guidelines for colleges that want to engage in an equity agenda. And so he's written a guide for colleges that are advancing an equity agenda from the perspective of a white CEO. And I have written from the perspective of a CEO of color. And so community colleges around the country are now going to be using our guides, our discussion guides, as they too begin these important conversations in their college. So know that, you know, I've been involved around the country with equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and we're going to start some of that work here at Rockland Community College so that we too can be a national leader in this area. So thank you so much. So glad you were here. Panelists, thank you. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And I am so proud of you, and I am so proud of Rockland Community College. Thank you so much. Panelists, please stay on, but everyone else, we thank you so much.